Nearly every gamer has heard of a 1983 video game crash, and it is one of the most important events in gaming history. The event, called the Atari shock in Japan, has had wide-reaching effects, many of which are still felt today, and marks one of the darkest periods for the gaming medium. So, today on Games of Reference, we shall be answering the question, why was there a video game crash in 1983? Before we ask why, we first need to know exactly what the video game crash was. In 1983, the previously booming North American gaming industry fell into a recession. That is, the industry became a lot less profitable. In 1983, video game sales made the gaming industry around $3.2 billion, but this sank to $100 million in 1985, a fall of over 95%. Many people at the time had doubts about the long-term viability of gaming consoles, and it wasn't until late 1985 and the US release of the NES that the console industry recovered. So, what caused this massive collapse in the first place? What is often cited as the major reason for the crash is the saturation of the gaming market from 1982 onwards, caused by the rise of third-party developers. In 1979, some programmers at Atari were unhappy, since they were not being credited for their work on designing and coding games, and wanted royalties on the games they make, similar to how a musician or a director would make their income. When their wishes were not granted, Activision was formed, the first ever third-party publisher. Before this, all games for the system had to be approved and published by the console's manufacturers. Many more publishers followed in Activision's footsteps, with companies developing games for the Atari 2600, ColecoVision, and other systems. When a court case against Activision, filed by Atari, fell in the favour of Activision, the practice of third-party publishing was effectively legitimized, causing even more publishers to appear. This is around the time the market became saturated. This saturation was caused by a few different factors. Firstly, there was not enough space in stores for all the games that were being released, because the games were being made at such a speed, retailers could not simply keep up. Secondly, many developers making games around this period were either inexperienced or lacked the skills needed to create truly great and innovative games. This led to the industry cloning any previously successful game, as it was easier to recreate something successful than to make a new idea from scratch. These practices led, ironically, to more unsuccessful games than otherwise, which could not sustain the gaming market. This cycle of poorly developed games and bad business practices was highlighted perfectly by the infamous E.T. for Atari 2600 and Pac-Man for the same console. Both these games were not very well received by critics and the public, the general consensus being that these games were exploiting their licenses for cash. In fact, due to licensing agreements only being settled in late July 1982, Howard Scott Warshaw, designer and programmer for E.T., had only 5.5 weeks to make the game, too short of a time frame to make the innovative game he wanted E.T. to be. The massive disappointment of this and Pac-Man caused many to turn away from gaming consoles, causing Atari to lose money and shortly thereafter be sold off. But this played into the hands of the main competitors to the console market, computers. Around the same time as the release of E.T., there was a price war between the computer manufacturers such as Commodore. Prices began to fall to a level comparable with that of video game consoles, while the power of computers stayed above the consoles, which made people question, why should I get a video game console when I can buy a PC which can play more complex games and let me do other tasks? Naturally, people started migrating over to computers, and due to relative ease for coding for a computer, many third parties followed suit. With all of that said, we can see there are multiple factors that caused the video game crash. Third-party publishing, a flood of games, hyped up disappointments, and the rise of personal computers. Video games were dying, but like most games, there would always be another chance to restart the industry. Thanks for watching Games of Reference. What do you think about the video game crash? Leave that and anything else in the comments below, and like, subscribe and click the links on the screen if you want to see more. But until then, see you in the next video.